diplomatic channel this week is focused squarely on the growing tension in the Baltic as the US and other Western countries call on citizens to evacuate. Now, knowing a Russian attack is very possible any day now. My guests on the program today are Nigeria's ambassador to Russia and Belarus, Professor Abdullahi Shehu, who will be joining us from Moscow, and former permanent secretary at the Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and former consul general to the United States, Ambassador Joe Keshi, who will be joining from Abuja in Nigeria. But first, a quick check on other discussions in diplomatic circles. I am Amarachi Ubani. Welcome to the program.
The Nigerians in Diaspora Commission Chairman Abike Dabiri-Arewa has assured the Nigerian Association of Foreign-Trained Pharmacists of its partnership in creating health awareness to communities in the country. The promise was made during a visit by representatives of the association to the Nitcom bus, who said the purpose would be facilitated with the state diaspora focal point officers in their various localities.
How do we have the diaspora to get their homes directly? That is a big one, and we have the diaspora mortgage schemes where you can even get a little money, mortgage, and then get your own homes. And Diaspora Investment Summit, I hope you participate at the next one.
Okay, sure.
To see where you can invest in terms of coming to see opportunities and a whole lot more programs.
The president of the association, Dr. John Ejezie, says they hope to promote volunteerism that will push the country to the next level through social health awareness.
We are trained in different nations. All these nations have unique things they can offer. And if we can all bring everything that we have learned together, and come back here, we definitely can improve the health and awareness, and even socioeconomic status of our people.
Und auf Herrn Dr. Frank Walter Steinmeier 1045 Stimmen.
Frank Walter Steinmeier has been elected to a second term as Germany's president after a special assembly voted the veteran politician, seen as a symbol of consensus and continuity, back in the prominent yet largely ceremonial post. Steinmeier's election by secret ballot by a majority of the Assembly for another 5 years was widely expected amid broad support from most of Germany's major parties during a time of global turmoil and following a recent change of the German government. In his acceptance speech, he criticized Russia's military build-up near Ukraine, saying, "I can only warn President Putin, don't underestimate the strength of democracy."
Und dafür trägt Russland die Verantwortung.
His warning was re-echoed by Chancellor Olaf Scholz on Sunday, who warned of immediate sanctions and hard reactions if Russia attacks Ukraine. Mr. Scholz meets the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Monday and President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday as part of diplomatic efforts to ease tensions.
Zusammen mit unseren Verbündeten in Europa und in der NATO.
Tension is reaching fever pitch at the Baltic, going by the back and forth between Russia and Western countries, with Ukraine right in the middle. Leaders have been exploring the path of diplomacy, but even that may have hit a roadblock. The US President Joe Biden had a secure phone conversation with the Russian President Vladimir Putin on Saturday, and even that was not successful, as Russia accused the US of ignoring its key security requests, including the opposition to the NATO expansion eastward and the deployment of offensive weapons near the Russian borders. The accusations were made by the Russian foreign and defense ministers over their respective phone talks with the U.S. counterparts. The U.S., Ukraine and NATO claim Russia is massing huge military forces near the eastern border of Ukraine and plans for invasion. Russia denied the claim, saying the move from NATO threatens Russia's border security and that Russia has a right to deploy troops inside its territory to defend the country. In the meantime, the US, UK, and Germany are leading calls by several countries to their citizens to leave Ukraine. A call became urgent from Friday. According to the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, the risk of military action is high enough and a threat imminent enough that evacuation is the prudent thing to do.
So far, we've only seen escalation from Moscow.
I want to bring in now Ambassadors Abdullahi Shehu and Ambassador Joe Keshi. Ambassador Shehu is the current Nigerian ambassador to Russia and Belarus. Ambassador Keshi is a former permanent secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and also former consul general to the United States. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you for having me.
I want to begin with you, Ambassador Abdullahi Shehu. International calls for evacuations from Ukraine are growing. You have the US, you have the UK, you have Canada, many Western countries calling for citizens to evacuate. What is the position of the Nigerian government in light of this?
Well, I don't think that Nigeria has made a formal statement with regard to the crisis or the tension in Ukraine. But from the mission's perspective over here, we are calm. We are monitoring the situation. The situation is very calm in Moscow and indeed in Russia. However, as Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, described it, that is hysteria. Well, one could describe it as a storm in a teacup, because it's like one crying and mourning more than the bereaved. We hear a lot of concerns being expressed, but of recent, just yesterday, the Ukrainian government itself advised that we should downplay the news about the tension because it is still being managed diplomatically. I think that there is no cause for alarm. As soon as we see there is any serious problem, we will alert our government accordingly. But for the time being, we want to believe with the statement by the Russian government that it has no intention of attacking or invading Ukraine.
Okay, so I know that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had a couple of weeks ago released a statement to Nigerians in Ukraine, asking them to be law-abiding, listen to the news, keep abreast with what's going on. But they also provided phone numbers and email addresses for people in Ukraine, Nigerians in Ukraine, to reach the embassy if need be. But with what you said, you still believe that people in Ukraine are in no imminent danger of an attack from Russia, right?
Well, I cannot speak for people in Ukraine. We have an ambassador in Ukraine who has assessed the situation and has issued a statement to Nigerian citizens to be on the lookout in Ukraine. For us, we're on top of the issues. The moment we determine that there is threat to the lives of Nigerians, we will alert our citizens accordingly. But we don't want to cry more than the bereaved in a situation where the people saying that there is likely going to be an attack are not the ones to attack. We understand the logic of war is by provocation. And what President Putin said 2 days ago is that the actions of the United States and other countries that are raising the alarm are provocative. That means that every country will try to exercise restraint in this situation in order for the international community to have peace and allow Ukraine to deal with its problems on its own.
Ambassador Keshi, do you agree with him that, the Western countries calls for evacuations and it's one of the things that they have said, calling for citizens to be on the lookout, is all provocation for Russia to find an excuse to invade Ukraine? And do you think the Nigerians who live in Ukraine should be also packing up and getting ready to leave?
This is a challenging situation, and I can only share with you my experience, which was why listening to the ambassador in Moscow, I was more or less smiling to myself and recalling what we experienced in Freetown a few years ago. We were sitting in Freetown. We got some security reports of possible invasion by the rebels. The authorities kept assuring us that it's impossible for the rebels to enter Freetown. But we took the precaution of trying to find out how many Nigerians are there and to make arrangement for evacuation. And one of the challenges we had was that a number of Nigerians did not even show up, despite our efforts. We recorded 5,000 Nigerians, and that was the number we provided to headquarters. But eventually, not too long after that, all our optimism, all our confidence were destroyed by the invasion of the rebel forces into Freetown. And before you knew it, we were all refugees. The assurances given did not hold water, and everything just went down unexpectedly. And so here in Ukraine and Russia, everybody, I find it very interesting that they are all so calm and so cool. But I also remember that was the situation we had in Freetown and so on. War could break out by accident, and at that time it would become very, very difficult to evacuate. But the difference here is that because it's a Russians who might invade, it might certainly be possible for for people to find their way out of Russia. But I really don't know how it would be for people living in Ukraine. So when you say that the people should watch out for what now? Watch out for when the soldiers begin to move into Ukraine. What do you do at that point in time? We were watching out. We couldn't move. Eventually, we were rescued by the American warship that came to Sierra Leone with a very strong military that took part of the city and got us out of that place. So the situation you find in Ukraine is actually not too different. The Russians have played troops in Belarus, and from the Belarus, from what we heard, to the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, is less than 50 or so kilometers away. And so this presents a very, challenging situation, not just for the Nigerians in Ukraine, but also for the embassy, how to manage the situation should anything happen. And I just think that they should be prepared, and I pray that the ministry would also be helping them in that preparation.
The Russian Foreign Secretary Sergei Lavrov said that all this talk about Russian aggression is a Western propaganda campaign that pursues provocative goals.
Well, what simply Lavrov is saying is that war is imminent from the perspective of those who feel that they are anxious to fight war. But from his own perspective, he said clearly that Russia has no intention of invading Ukraine, but Russia is interested in defending its territorial integrity and maintaining a multipolar war. Now, yesterday, President Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine was quoted to have said that fear or panic is the enemy's friend. So it would look like those who are whipping this panic could be the enemies. They may not, after all. But the reality is that I do not think that Ukraine is whipping the kind of panic that America is whipping. However, as I said earlier, perhaps America has certain intelligence that other people do not have.
My conversation with Professor Abdullahi Shehu and Ambassador Joe Keshi continues after the break. Stay with us. I have heard in certain quarters that Russia is waiting to be provoked by, all these other Western nations. Russia is waiting to be provoked before an invasion takes place. Ambassador Keshi, you think that diplomacy is still possible at this time?
Diplomacy is always possible if both sides are sincere. I think what the Western world is trying to do, they're learning from the mistake they made when, what's this other place that was invaded by the Russians a few years ago?
Crimea.
And,
Crimea.
Yes, Crimea. And the Russians have held on to, to it again. It's very interesting to accuse one side of trying to expand, and nobody is looking at it, what is the other side trying to do as well? Because when you took Crimea, you actually lost Ukraine. And if you go into Ukraine now, you are just going to set out the alarm bell to other smaller nations there that, look, there is danger in allowing this country with so much arms, including nuclear arms, to be around us without some defense from somewhere. But I think diplomacy is still necessary. And the good thing is that they are still talking. And we sincerely hope that in this talk that people will be rational, although very often you don't approach such a conversation from a rational point of view, because you always define everything from your self-interest, or your national interest. But your national interest in this case must also be expanded to include other factors. Can peace be made? Can this issue be resolved without going to war? Of course, yes, it can be resolved without going to war. Will it be a win-win situation for everybody? Of course, it could be a win-win situation for everybody if everybody is ready to be rational, and if they are ready to, if the desire for peace is there. So this is my own view. But sometimes also, we are all human beings, and no nation would stand and watch anybody amass troops to its border and will not seek for help from anybody. That's the reality of life. That's the reality of life. I won't get a letter from armed robbers that they are coming to rob, and I stay in my house. If there's nobody to defend me, I'll call the police and say, this is what I've received. And certainly, if you have an efficient police, they'll begin to take measures to protect you. And so it's probably not as simple as that, but look, it's just a graphic description of what we're experiencing in this part in that part of the world where I don't know whether you unfortunately reside now, but that's the situation, that's the reality.
Without being asked, let me say, as Ambassador Keshi stated, there is no alternative to diplomacy, because it's the only way by which this quagmire can be resolved. But we have to understand the framework for diplomacy. The United Nations Security Council is the major framework to address issues of aggression. I am not sure this matter has been tabled before the United Nations Security Council. This matter was taken up by NATO. I am not sure that all countries of the world, including Russia, are members of NATO. So it looks like that diplomacy is one-sided. Again, you could see the flurry of consultations going on between President Putin and other leaders of the world. President Emmanuel Macron visited last week and had a 5-hour consultation with President Putin. After he left, he made a statement that, yes, President Putin told him that he has no intention of going to war. But President Putin said, or Russia said, that they have put across some requests for security guarantees. And these security guarantees can only be achieved when nations sit around the table and discuss the context of the Minsk agreement and look at the roles that the Normandy 4 countries are playing, Russia, Germany, France, and Ukraine itself. Let them sit down and find a common solution to this problem. They will be able to resolve it. But for one country to say it's coming from 1,000 miles to protect gas supply to Europe or to Ukraine, I think one will have to ask a question: why is it going to take that step? Is it in its own interest or in the interest of those countries? So this is just what I can say, but I believe strongly that there is no alternative to diplomacy in resolving this this problem.
Now, for both of you, would Africa win or lose? This, what's happened in the Baltic, would this be to our advantage, or is Africa going to bear the impact of whatever, however the situation turns out in the Baltic Sea?
This situation should not be underestimated, because if it is allowed to go out of hand, we have seen clearly where last weekend President Putin visited China, and himself and President Xi Jinping issued a joint statement. And China clearly said that it was opposed to Ukraine joining NATO, meaning that China has taken side with Russia in this situation. Now, if we allow this situation to escalate beyond control, there is a similar situation between China and Taiwan. There is equally a similar situation between North Korea and South Korea. And perhaps this is why America is currently embarking on a discussion between the two Koreas, including Japan, with respect to what happens in that region. Now, there are other nuclear powers around the world. If we look at the balance of nuclear power, even though they have not expressed it clearly, we should begin to ask, where is India in this situation? And we may ask, where is Pakistan in this situation? Even Iran, what could be its own position? If such a situation is allowed to go out of hand, can Europe withstand the kind of devastation that we are likely to have? Why would the international community choose at this age of technology to go to war when all the measures being adopted by the United Nations is aimed to prevent the occurrence of war? Perhaps the panic that is being created is for a certain purpose, and we cannot conclude on that purpose. And therefore, Africa's position would be to watch, monitor, and observe.
Ambassador Keshi, you agree?
You know, I've always argued that Africa is at the periphery of almost everything in the world. We are the periphery of development. We are the periphery of international discourse. You know, in crises like this, I don't think anybody, cares about Africa to start with. And this is why, Africa must sit down and begin to think seriously about itself, and that the rest of the world must not determine its destiny. If we do not, as I like to say, if we do not become developed and well-equipped ourselves, this is when we ask questions like this: oh, if there's a war in Europe, how we would survive? Even before the Europeans came to this part of the world, we survived. And if we do, and except we get out of all the, maybe actually it will help us in one way, because if the shipping lines are closed, all the luxury goods that have made us lose our balance and our senses in terms of building up our own economy. Maybe when the border, we can't even travel out of this place, as COVID did to us. We can't enjoy the luxuries we normally enjoy somewhere. And we all sit down in this country. Maybe we come to our senses and begin to develop our, you remember a couple of over 30 or 50 years ago, actually, or more, China closed itself. And when China re-emerged to the world, it came out as a completely different and changed, nation. Maybe I'm not praying for war to break out, and I sincerely hope there will be no war, but if it does, That's exactly, I sincerely hope that it will not go to that extent of affecting us to the extent that we'll begin to, feel it. But if it does, it's an opportunity for us to, reset the agenda of development in this country.
Ambassador and Professor Abdullahi Shehu, thank you so much for joining us from Moscow. Ambassador Joe Keshi, thank you for joining us from Abuja. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure speaking with you on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is where we end the program today. This episode and other Diplomatic Channel episodes can be viewed on our website, channelstv.com. You can also reach me on any of the addresses showing on your screen. I'm Amarat Giovanni. Thanks for watching.